Japan, a land erupting with spiritual creativity and born from a mystical history, protecting over 14,000 islands, occupied by a diverse culture, religions, and story. Where gods and goddesses walk amongst the forests and are brought to life by the lush nature of Japan. Konnichiwa, and welcome to Inktober. Today, let's explore the amazing Japan. The Japanese are some of the most amazing and creative people I have ever come across. And my first trip to Japan was about 20 years ago when I was in my early 20s, and a random trip there. And what an amazing experience I had. I knew nothing of the culture really. I definitely didn't know how to speak the language. I took the first flight to a different country, and it was Japan. And it was awesome. Everything from exploring the animation and the creativity of their arts, to their food, to their sports, to the way they dress. They're all phenomenal ways to express the culture and see how Japan has developed. One of my favorite is the creativity of their culture and their history, which is very derived from the religions and their belief systems of Shintoism and Buddhism throughout these centuries of this development. And today we're going to explore some of the gods in the spiritual world of the Kami and the Yokai that Japan has created and made explanations for from nature. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And if you're not new and you haven't done it, please do that. That'd be cool. As well as hit that notification button because I come out with videos every week. And you might want to see different gods from different cultures. And that's very cool. But yes, thank you for watching, and let's get into it. And let me first disclaim that I am not the all-knowing on Japan or the Japanese gods or Shintoism or any of these things. These are just deep studies of mine that I like to explore and give information back to you. And if you have other information and deep knowledge of the gods and goddesses, as well as culture and lore that I might have mistakenly said, definitely put it in the comments below and correct me so that we can all share in good knowledge. And let's get to know Japan a little bit first. This is a very large island next to the east of Asia, most of Asian countries like China and Korea. Now, it's 75% of the country's terrain is mountainous and heavily forested. And you've seen any of the movies, you probably see how forested it is. It's very thick and very creepy. And in the forest lies so much lore and mystical theology to their religion. It's beautiful, and it comes from the fact that they are a large group of people on this island. And right now in 2025, it is 123 million Japanese in Japan, and it's the 11th most populous country. And if you ever intend to visit Japan, definitely check out the capital, Tokyo, which is an extremely amazing and fun place to visit, but not my favorite. Definitely check out Kyoto, Osaka, and if you got time, go up north, go to Hokkaido and some other towns. It's a beautiful country, and everywhere is diverse. You've got farmlands, you've got cities, you've got little towns, you've got temples, you've got different places for different parts of Japan, and the food changes very quickly, so take advantage of that. Now, the Japanese have been on this island for more than 36,000 years. It wasn't until around the 4th and 6th centuries when you start seeing the people groups come together under one emperor in Nara. And then much later in the 12th century, you actually start seeing something that we might know more of, and that's the shogun and the feudal lords called the daimyo. They're like enforcing the royal nobility, and that usually comes to what we know today as the samurai. And from this point, Japan will start to develop more of that shogunate and imperial forces that will struggle and battle and go against each other for quite some time. The interesting thing is that Japan actually first appears in written history in an actual Chinese book of Han, which was completed in 111 AD, and it has a describing of 100 small kingdoms, likely that being one of them. And now for the religion part. Now, Buddhism actually was introduced to Japan from Korea and the Korean kingdom of Baekje in 552. As it moved over into Japan, it began to take on more of the shape of the Chinese Buddhism and influence. And this was heavily pushed during the Asuka period, and you had people like Prince Shotoku and other ruling class members pushing this new religion of Japanese Buddhism. But before Buddhism makes its way into Japan, we get Shintoism. And today we're going to really be focusing on Shintoism and the characters that are placed into this polytheistic and animistic religion. But what is Shintoism? It's an East Asian religion, right? Regarded by its practitioners in Japan as the indigenous religion and the nature's religion. And Shintoists don't really have an all-powerful authority and control over the Shinto, right? It's very diverse in the beliefs, and the practice changes due to different locations in Japan. And in Shinto, they primarily worship and serve these characters called the Kami. These are supernatural entities that revolve around Shintoism. The Kami are kind of like spirits, but they're also like the Force. If you've ever seen Star Wars, you know what I'm talking about. The Force, the way. But I don't think the Japanese believe that they can move objects or read minds and do mind tricks. Shintoists believe that there is a spiritual realm that kind of flows through all things. And that portrays into almost literally anything that they find a need for, right? There is a kami deer, which I'm drawing here to the left, and you can see that this deer has harnesses on to be ridden, and this is part of their lore. There was a white deer from Nara in this park that this god would ride, right? And it's just a white deer. And that deer is important to the culture, and it is respected, it is bowed to, and all deers around Nara Park are taken care of and treated because of their love for the kami. And if you've ever seen those little orange little shrines in households or out in the temples or any kind of little shrine, jinja, public shrines, right, and the kamidana, household shrines, those are worship the kami, the different kamis of whatever they're serving. Now, the Shintoists also perform kagura dances, rites of passage, and of course kami festivals. These are all things celebrated throughout the year in different locations and temples and households. And when you go to these temples, you'll see people doing these washing of their hands and rinsing out of things, as well as folding paper and bowing and lighting incense. And you see all these different practices that are being done. And these are all to show respect and pay tribute to the kami. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there is an art kami. And once I find that art kami, I will give it whatever it needs to give me the skills I need to draw and do art better. But that's an example of a kami. Like, I can create a kami for a reason, or if I feel that there's something that happened, a kami would come to be because the force is living through them, and I want to keep that alive through rituals and, just worship. And that's what the Shintos kind of do. There's a kami named Ibisu, is a large fellow born without bones, in some stories without even arms and legs. He's the god of good fortune and trade for fishermen and merchants. Even has a beer named after him, which sounds pretty good. And I think that just reading the stories of the kami and yokai alone teaches us enough about building a backstory for our own characters and drawings that we want to develop. So definitely give that a look and look into the Japanese lore for those characters and development. The mystical nature of Japan's forest is something that has bred so much media and storytelling through Japan. We see that there's kami for almost all the animals and the trees and rocks and even formations we see. And Japan has over 90,000 species of wildlife, not including one of the wildest biodiverse forest regions in the world. Japan is a breeding ground for kami and the yokai. And in the same way that any culture that is surrounded by this beautiful landscape, as well as the environment reacting with natural disasters such as earthquakes and tsunamis, you're obviously going to breed very powerful gods and reasons for why these things happen. And that's really where Shintoism and this mystical religion kind of has a unique twist to it, because it just has a reason and an explanation for all things. And for different regions, they come up with their own, and it's okay. It's kind of uh, all borrowed and played with throughout Japan about these different gods and kami and yokai. And the kami didn't necessarily need a physical form. In fact, they were this fluid, transparent kind of force. So they didn't need to embody any kind of nature or any kind of object. Nonetheless, wind, rain, fire, and sunshine, and all the deaths and earthquakes and all that stuff will be attributed to them anyways. Kami could even embody humans in a sense. Well, like dead humans could become kami. The Emperor Ojin, he was supposedly become Kami Hachiman, in which I'm supposing his traits led him to become the kami of and protector of Japan and the kami of war. And eventually there would be around 25,000 shrines dedicated to him. Now, not all gods and goddesses and kami are good in Shintoism. There are benevolent ones, the Oni, the Kappa, Mononoke, and a few others, often portrayed as vengeful or scary spirits who, may have died in a terrible way. There's a lot of movies like this. You ever seen The Ring? If you haven't, go watch it. It's a great comedy. Before I explain the drawing of this goddess right here, Konohanasakuya-hime, I am going to talk about the yokai, which I'm also drawing right here with the starfish and this pierced, giant, three-eyed creature thing. The yokai take very similar traits as the kami, with like animal-like features, like the turtles, as well as some inanimate objects as well. They are also known to shapeshift, so they can practically be anything. And as for this drawing here of this three-eyed yokai, I'm just making him up. I'm creating him from my own, and this comes from the Edo period in about 1600 to the 1800s. There was many artists recreating the yokai. Toriyama Sekin, I don't know how to say his name correctly, I apologize, but he created new yokai, and he took inspiration from folktales and lore, and that was accepted. The famous anime illustrator Hayao Miyazaki, he has mostly kami and yokai just glittered throughout all his animations and films, and it's beautiful. And I'm not sure that all are actual literal worshipped kami and yokai, but rather his own creations and interpretations to traditional ones. And that's what I'm doing here with this three-eyed giant one. I'm taking some visions of ones that have already been created and recreating them in my own interpretation. And I believe that because of the yokai and the kami, the Japanese culture has been able to encourage the creativity and the imagination of other yokai and all the fun ways to present it through media and art, as well as through books and story. When I was thinking of what the starfish's lore or mythology would be, I was thinking, okay, this yokai could be the starfish of sunburns, and maybe you have to pay tribute to this starfish in order for you not to have sunburn. But it probably happened from some old guy on a beach, found a starfish, fell in love with it, fell asleep on the beach, woke up all burned, starfish was gone, and there's your kami and yokai to worship right there. I think that's pretty fun. And of course, putting a large eye in the middle, super cool. So this is one way that the Japanese actually come to understand the great forces of nature they live around. Now let's get into the main subject of my drawing, and that is Konohanasakuya-hime. She's the goddess of Mount Fuji, as well as cherry blossoms and trees. A kami goddess that is very peaceful and brings that sense to the Japanese. The story of Konohanasakuya-hime begins with love at first sight. When the heavenly deity Ninigi descended to earth, he met the beautiful Sakuya-hime on the seashore and immediately fell in love. Ninigi went to her father, Ohoya Matsumi, to ask her hand in marriage. But Ohoya Matsumi had other plans. He offered his older daughter, Iwa Nagahime, the rock princess, instead. Ninigi refused. His heart would belong to Sakuya-hime. Reluctantly, her father agreed to the marriage, but not without consequences, because Ninigi rejected Iwa Naga. Human lives became short and fleeting, like cherry blossoms, rather than enduring and eternal, like stone. Soon after the marriage, Sakuya-hime became pregnant in just one night. Now, Ninigi grew suspicious, obviously. Could this really be his child, or was this the offspring of another god? Enraged by his accusation, Sakuya-hime decided to prove herself faithful in the most dramatic way possible. She entered a doorless hut and set it ablaze, declaring that if the child was truly Ninigi's, no harm would come to it. And inside the burning hut, she gave birth to 3 sons, Hoderi, Hosuseri, and Huri, all unharmed. Thank the gods for that. The legend of the healing water. Centuries later, Sakuya-hime revealed herself once more, this time as a savior. In the 11th century, a smallpox epidemic ravaged a small village of Kamide in Suruga province. Among the suffering was a young boy named Yosoji, whose mother had fallen gravely ill. Desperate to save her, Yosoji sought out a fortune teller, who told him the only cure was the water from the stream near Mount Fuji. The next day, he set out to find it, but when he reached a fork in the road where there was 3 different paths, he didn't know which way to go. That's when a mysterious girl dressed in white emerged from the forest. Without a word, she guided him to the stream. Yosoji filled his container and rushed home to give it to his mother. Days later, Yosoji returned to the same spot and the girl in white appeared again. She told him to return in 3 days, and that it would take 5 trips to the stream to heal all the villagers. True to her word, after 5 journeys, Yosoji's mother was cured, and so were all the other villagers. Everyone thanked Yosoji, but he knew that the real hero was the girl in white, so he returned to the stream one last time, hoping to thank her properly. But when he arrived, the stream had completely dried up and the girl was nowhere to be found. Yosoji fell to his knees and prayed, begging for her to reveal herself so he could express his gratitude, and the villagers would know whom to thank. Then she appeared before him one final time. Yosoji poured out his heart. He told her how grateful he was and how much her kindness meant to the village and to him. And he asked her name so people could honor her. But the girl in white simply smiled and said her identity didn't matter. She bid him a farewell, and then she swung a branch of camellia over her head, and then a cloud descended from Mount Fuji, lifted her up into the sky, and she's gone. In that moment, Yosoji understood the girl in white was none other than Konohanasakuya-hime, the goddess of... And as I'm drawing her, I'm putting in the background these very thin lines radiating from her head, kind of like that holy symbol, that very purity, light that comes from a lot of figures that are represented as good. So what did her children do? Well, Hoderi, the fire shrine, also called Umisachi Hiko, luck of the sea, he was a fisherman, and he was famous for his conflict with his younger brother Huri. Hoderi lent his younger brother the fishing hook, and Huri lost it in the sea, which led to some issues. And Hosuseri, the fire fade, the middle son, honestly, he doesn't play a major role in mythology. He's really in the background to his brothers, so there's not much about him. But then you have Huri, the fire distance, also called Yamasachi Hiko, luck of the mountain. He was a hunter, and he was probably the most important of the 3 sons. Because after he lost the fishing hook, he went to this undersea palace of Ryujin, the dragon god of the sea, and there he met and married Toyotama-hime, the dragon king's daughter. With her help, he gained power over his brothers. It's messed up, but you gotta do what you gotta do with your brothers to be mean. Most importantly, Huri became the grandfather of Emperor Jimmu, the legendary first emperor of Japan. Now, this would make Konohanasakuya-hime the great-grandmother of this imperial line, which is why she's such a significant deity in Japanese mythology. Now, how could anyone not read and explore the kami and yokai and the gods and goddesses of Japan and not find it fascinating, and also see how the Japanese throughout the history have adapted it to their situation and culture and environment even, and how the gods have expanded and the kami have really grown and been particular to people. And from my studies of Shinto, the afterlife is something of a neutral state. This is very similar to other religions where you don't have a heaven or hell per se like Christianity does, but you just have this existence. The body, the physical form is gone, and your soul, your spirit resides and continues for eternity as a soul, And this is where the ghost and the kami and the yokai come into play. That's why the Shintoists don't really find it shocking to believe in ghosts or even see ghosts or have them around. And in classic Shinto mythology, the dead go to Yomi, an underworld realm of darkness and impurity. But it's not like a tormenting place. It's not exactly hell as punishment. It's rather a gloomy, shadowy place where the dead reside. And this famous story they have involves Izanagi, who tries to rescue his wife, Izanami, from Yomi, but only to find that she's already eaten the food from there and in the underworld and couldn't return. As well as whenever he went down there, she looked pretty rough and he freaked out, left, locked her back in there. She freaked out and caused all this chaos. As he locked in his wife into the underworld, he needed to bathe himself because he was impure. And to purify himself, he jumped into the sea, cleaned himself off, bathed, and a number of deities actually came from this. The sun goddess Amaterasu was born from his left eye, the moon god Tsukiyomi was born from his right eye, and the storm god Susanoo was born from his nose. And because of this story of Izanagi's bathing, it became the founding of the Harai, the important ritual purification practices of Shinto. And this was very fun to draw and explore the mystical creatures and kami and gods of the Shintoist beliefs. And of course, thank you for watching the video, and please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification button for my next video. And yeah, I'm going to create more gods and goddesses and kami and yokai from Japan and the Shinto. So definitely watch my next videos. And this is Konohanasakuya-hime and the Yokai and Kami of the deep forest. Oh, and don't forget, if you're creative, go create.